Steve Eder on to tell us about Antigua.
Antigua.
I thought it was Antigua. Antigua post Stanford, right? That's the issue. I mean, he really did a number on that country, didn't he?
Well, it's fascinating because you go down to Antigua and you're hearing, for weeks during this trial about, Stanford's toll on Antigua. But what I found out there, which was interesting, was that the people of Antigua were actually, a lot of the regular common folks in Antigua felt that Alan Stanford was a hero.
A hero. Now, this is, we're talking about Alan Stanford, obviously the Ponzi scheme. Was convicted last week, 13 to 14 counts, money laundering, fraud, all those things. His name is mud here in the States, right? And this is the point of your story, that down there, it's a very different picture. He was a huge, huge benefactor down there, right?
And following up on that, were there many people, locals, who were invested in his funds?
Yeah.
Some great questions. I mean, there's a few things on this. One part of it is that there's definitely a different view from the government and the political folks than from the sort of the regular people that you come across in Antigua. The political people say that this was a problem. We have to sort of pick up the pieces and move on. It could take a generation for us to repair our image. It could take a generation for us to unwind all of these business dealings that we had with him. But then you had sort of the regular people who saw the jobs that came in as a result of the infrastructure that was being built. So it makes a lot of sense that on one hand you have people who saw $700 a week jobs coming, and on the other hand you have a government that needs to kind of deal with the aftermath. You don't see as much, I mean, in terms of investors, I don't think you see a lot of investors necessarily. I mean, there's definitely some in Antigua, but I don't think to the common people that was as much of a, of a concern. It was more that they saw the infrastructure coming in, they saw the jobs coming in, and like one person said, if he was stealing from the rich, he was giving it to the poor.
So it's interesting because you went down there for a couple of days to do this story. I mean, did you really just kind of, walk down the streets and approach people and try to get opinions on Stanford?
Yeah, I spent my time down there sort of in two parts. One, meeting with a lot of the government folk, the government people, the lawyers, and the sort of the people who really were maybe involved in the case or had to deal with the specifics of the aftermath of this. But then also, at the same time, I walked around the city, especially like the downtown areas where you would think if you walk off of a cruise ship and then there's people selling you things.
Right.
Those are the kinds of people, the taxi cab drivers, the souvenirs, salespeople.
Does his name
shopkeepers.
resonate with everybody?
Yes. I mean, everyone's Alan Stanford. I was in a market area and I asked a woman, I said, so what does Alan Stanford mean to you? And she said, oh, I cried. I cried when I heard the verdict.
Wow.
And then before I knew it, I had 4 or 5 women all coming, kind of surrounding me, basically shouting about what a great man Alan Stanford was.
So how has Antigua changed then since this crisis unfolded? All those projects that he was involved in funding, they're no longer happening? Are tourists not coming? When you talk about the image, the repair that needs to be done, how does it manifest itself?
Well, in terms of the image, it has a lot to do with the way that other countries deal with Antigua and see Antigua in terms of the banking community. There's a sense out there from the international community that Antigua should shoulder some of the blame for what took place in the Stanford affair. Antigua's political leaders will say, well, there were a lot of people who were duped by what Stanford was accused of doing, including the U.S. and regulators elsewhere, so don't put it all on us. In terms of the when you think of the impact in terms of tourists and that kind of thing, you see stalled out projects. Right in the downtown square when you're walking off of Market Street, you see a green border around a building an empty lot that Stanford had planned to develop into a multi-story complex. And across the street from that, you see an old branch of the Bank of Antigua, which has been taken over by a regional bank. So you see this. Where you really see it is when you get out at the airport, and you drive. You see this incredibly built up. It looks like a piece of a nice suburb in the U.S. where you have headquarters for various Stanford industries there, for island headquarters. You have a new athletic club. You have restaurants. Some of that is operating under new management now. Some of it's just closed. It's just it's there. The structures are there, but there's
Do you think some of that will have sort of a lasting benefit for the country? I mean, okay, the guy's in jail, his reputation's in tatters, he's not going back there. But some of those things he built, do you think they'll stay? Do you think they'll help in the long run, even though they were based on this Ponzi scheme?
I think I spoke with one of his attorneys who said that, look, it makes a lot of sense that people there would feel this way about Alan Stanford because he helped with building the infrastructure, he helped with building the roads, and they're appealing this case, they're planning to appeal this case, and he said if he had been able to finish the job that he started, you can only imagine what the possibilities would have been.
The ends justifying the means there. Yeah.
At least, you would think, you would hope for them. All right, Steve Eder, thank you very much.